Hello pals, it is tag time. We're just at the end of the year, bizarrely enough. I never know if I'm doing this tag too late, but I feel like I did it even later last year. We're here to do the end of the year book tag, which was created by Ariel Bissett, who I will link in the description box down below. Without further ado, let's get started. The first question is, are there any books this year that you need to finish? Short answer, no. Longer answer, there is one book that I started this year and put quite a bit of time and effort into, but didn't actually end up finishing ultimately. But I didn't want to get rid of it. I still do want to read it. That book is The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. If you've read Murakami, you know that you need to be in a very specific sort of headspace. You need to be open to strangeness, but also a plot that maybe doesn't really go all that much of anywhere. Some really bizarre descriptions sometimes of people, particularly of women. And I got about halfway through this book this year and I still really want to finish it, but I just don't think I'm going to finish it by the end of the year. I will pick it back up again next year, but in the next month and a half, looking very unlikely. I can't even really tell you what this book is about. And from what I recall, it starts out with his cat having gone missing. He is just separated from his wife, and that all seems pretty banal and pretty simple, but it gets kind of weird kind of fast, and I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time. But I know that this is a book that I ultimately will end up picking up eventually, just probably not before the end of this year. Next question then is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? I do, I suppose. I'm nearly at that point now, because we're mid-November, where I'm like, sure, it's basically winter. I'm sort of over autumn now, as apparently are the leaves on the trees. It's looking very wintry out there. It is getting quite cold. But two books that I imagine that I will read before the end of this year. One is the third book in a trilogy that I really want to finish, and that is The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This trilogy starts out following a young girl who is living with her family, and she's living in this very religious community, but she doesn't necessarily conform to these beliefs. She sees other things, she has other beliefs, and it brings about a lot of difficulties for her and for her family and for her community. It feels really magical, it feels really mythological. It's very snowy, it's very cold, and it's a trilogy that I have been really enjoying, and I've been saving this until winter, so this is probably one that I will pick up in December. The other book then that I feel is quite seasonal, more toward winter again rather than autumn, but that is the second book in the His Dark Materials trilogy, and it is The Subtle Knife. So I read Northern Lights. It was the last book I read in a certain year. It wasn't last year, it may not have been the year before, it could have even been 2021, 2022, I'm not sure, but it was a while back. Let me tell you, that book was a very rare 5 stars from me, and I'm not quite sure exactly what it is in me that has resisted picking this up. I have started it on audiobook and ended up putting it down because I felt like I actually think I want to read this physically so I can absorb it a lot more. Sometimes I find with audiobooks I lose a lot of that information, and this is one that I feel like I really want to savor. I read Northern Lights in the week between Christmas and New Year's whenever I read it, and I think I'll probably do that with this one this year as well. Northern Lights felt very wintry, felt very magical as well. It's a very difficult book to describe, so I'm not even going to try, but it's absolutely brilliant in my opinion, and I have really high hopes for this one as well. The next question then is there a new release that you're still waiting for? Technically no, because I'm not waiting for it. I have been working my way through Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight archives, and I am about maybe 100 to 200 pages into the fourth book, which is Rhythm of War, and Wind and Truth is released in December. And I thought that I would be ready for it, but there's just no way that that's going to happen now. So yes, I will be reading Wind and Truth eventually, but I won't be picking it up before the end of this year. So I'm not technically waiting on it. Just to add to that, there are a couple of new releases from this year that I never actually got around to. Two of them were shortlisted for the Booker Prize. So Orbital, the winner by Samantha Harvey, was one that was definitely on my radar. It's quite short. I think it's only about 160 pages and it's about astronauts in space looking down on Earth. That's literally all I know about it, but something about that really appeals to me and I will be picking that up, but again, it's a next year job. And then the other book is The Safe Keep, and I believe that that is a sapphic novel and it sounds like something that I absolutely want to pick up, but again, I won't be picking it up before the end of this year. And then the next question is, what are 3 books that you want to read before the end of the year? I went to my shelves because I have been struggling my way through my physical TBR. I say struggling because the number was a bit overwhelming at the start of the year. It's not that I don't want to read the books that I own. I picked 3 books that weren't the ones that I've mentioned already, and I've been feeling a bit of a pull towards literary fiction again. I feel like I've been reading a lot of fantasy this year, but surprise, surprise, I was a 100% literary fiction girl about 2 years ago. I never really read fantasy. I never really read sci-fi. All of my favourite books of all time are literary fiction. There's something that literary fiction does that I don't think other genres do as well. I love how it works with language, how it really emphasises the way that something is written, which really affects how a story is told and how a story comes across. I love how it's often incredibly character based. I love how it gives so many insights into human connection and disconnection, as well as the case may be. I really love literary fiction basically. I'm feeling that pull again. So the first book that I hope to pick up before the end of this year is again the first book in a sort of trilogy. So this book is Outline by Rachel Cusk and the next 2 books are Transit and Kudos. I really hate the font in these books, but otherwise I really love the covers for Rachel Cusk's books. And I read Second Place by Rachel Cusk a few years ago when it was nominated for the Booker Prize. Wasn't super into it, but really saw a lot in Rachel Cusk's writing that I absolutely loved, and I've been feeling the pull towards this for a while. All I know about it is that it is about a teacher who is teaching in a European country. Am I even right in saying that? Yes, a teacher teaching creative writing over an oppressively hot summer in Athens. And it says as well that it's a story told in 10 conversations. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming it is literally what it says on the tin, but we'll see. We'll find out soon enough, hopefully. I am really feeling the pull toward this now, so I would imagine this will be one that I will pick up in December. Next up then is a book that probably needs no introduction, and that book is Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. So I picked this book up recently in Edinburgh, believe it or not, even though the week before that I had seen Colm Tóibín in person, but I didn't ask him to sign any of my books, and I didn't actually own Brooklyn, and I've never read Brooklyn. I've seen the film. I saw this in Edinburgh and it was a signed copy, and I just said, who am I to not pick this up? This is a book about a girl, and I believe she lives in Brooklyn and then something draws her back to Ireland. It's kind of about her 2 lives in 2 different places and the choices that she has to make between those. It's a long time since I saw the film, so I might be wrong. I used to avoid Colm Tóibín's books because Colm Tóibín is from a place that's really not very far from me, about a half an hour drive, and he uses local place names and somehow it feels too close to home. I don't know if that makes sense, but as I've gotten older I've realised that I have been doing myself a disservice as a reader. I have only read The Blackwater Lightship by Colm Tóibín and I really want to rectify that, so this is going to be the next one. And then one which I have, in a rare state of madness, left the price tags on the front. I obviously bought it in a secondhand bookshop, and that book is Snow by Orhan Pamuk, and I believe that this is about a journalist and he is working or living, I think, on the Turkish border, and he's very much in a sort of politically turbulent space, religiously turbulent space, and I don't know too much about it. I feel like it's one that I want to read close to winter as well. It's named Snow. There's definitely a blizzard that kind of keeps everybody trapped where they are, which I can only imagine really compounds all of these political tensions and all of these other tensions. So it's something that has been on my TBR for quite some time and I keep putting it off, but I've heard really good things about it. And this is a book that won the Nobel Prize for Literature as well, so I absolutely need to pick this one up ASAP. And then the next question is there a book that you think could still shock you and become your favourite of the year? I don't actually think so. I have had, in terms of quantity, quite a good reading year, but interestingly enough, I've only given 5 stars to one book, and that book was a reread. And I have primarily been reading books from my shelves, so that doesn't bode well for my choices in books for myself, does it? As things stand, I believe that there are books that I'm going to read between now and the end of the year that I'm going to really enjoy, but I don't know if I'm going to find any favourites. I don't know if I've gotten too picky with 5 stars, but I always feel like 5 stars is a feeling, and I just haven't really gotten that feeling, and I haven't been getting that feeling. So I don't know, but we'll see. It's all up in the air, everything to play for. And then the last question is, have you started making any reading plans for next year? So yes and no. I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing, which is to read all of the physical books on my shelves, or at least to get down to between 10 and 15 and have that rolling then a bit. And then there are a couple books that I want to pick up. So one thing that I try to do at the start of the year as well is to pick up an intimidatingly long book and read that first thing at the start of the year, just to sort of separate myself from this urge to read as many books as possible, as quickly as possible in January, to get the numbers up, because reading is for enjoyment for me anyway, and I don't want to get caught up in that, so that's how I avoid it. And this year's choice, it's The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, and this is about a man who has been wrongfully imprisoned, and that's pretty much all I know. And I have heard that it's probably one of the greatest books ever written, and I really look forward to actually picking it up for myself. Font is quite small, pals. I'm gonna have a time reading this. How many pages? We're talking 1200 pages, so that should keep me occupied for a while. I probably won't finish it in January. I'll probably mix that in with other books as well, just take my time with it and really absorb it. But the goal is to not get caught up in the numbers game. And then the last plan that I have for next year is I want to continue reading Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series. So the next book that I have to read is Fool's Fate, I think. Nope, wrong book, my mistake. The next book that I want to read is Fool's Errand, which is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy. So the first trilogy within the Realm of the Elderling series is the Farseer trilogy, which I've read. Then we have the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which I've read, and this is the next book that I want to read. Robin Hobb has become a really important author to me. I find this series to be so special, and I've heard so many good things about the books to come. It is a fantasy series. It almost feels sort of literary in its pacing. It is quite slow. It is really well written, and it has absolutely absorbed and consumed my heart and soul. And I haven't been reading them. I've been putting them off, and I really want to pick these up again early in the new year. But other than that, pals, I don't have any big major reading plans. I'm toying with the idea of reading the Woman's Prize long list when it's announced. I'm toying with the idea of the Booker Prize long list when it's announced, but I'm not going to set any of that in stone, because that is a massive commitment when I already have so many books to read on my shelves. And that's that, pals. Let me know if you have any specific answers to any of the questions in this tag. Let me know how you've been doing with your own reading plans for this year. Do you feel like you've achieved what you wanted to achieve in terms of your reading? Did you have any reading goals? Do you even care? I think reading should just really be about having fun. That's why I read, for escapism, but also to develop empathy, to learn about stories that I just wouldn't learn about in my day-to-day life. Thanks as ever for watching, lads, and I'll chat to you soon in another video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to. Take care. Bye bye.